Welcome to the League of Nerds, Podcast 5, Comic Book Segment number 4. My name's John Cooney. Let's talk about comics. Now, we're talking about comics being released this first week of March. A lot of titles that I'm excited to read this week. Specifically, Action Comics number 7 from DC, featuring Superman. Detective Comics number 7, featuring Batman. Fairest number 1, which is a spin-off from the Fables Vertigo title. It's featuring the women from the Fables series, and I'm anxious to see what they're doing with this title and what they can do with these great characters. If you're not reading Fables by Bill Willingham, it's a really great title that features what fairy tale characters would be like living in the real world, and it is a very interesting and entertaining and thought-provoking series, and I recommend it. Justice League International number 7 out this week. Huntress number 6, that's the final issue of that limited series. And then Beyond the Fringe number 1 out this week. We talked last week about the media crossover comics, and this is one of those. This is written by Fringe star Joshua Jackson, who plays Peter Bishop. It collects the first story arc from the digital comic and puts it into print this week, and tells a story that I believe takes place between season 3 and 4 of the TV series. If you like Fringe, you should check that out. From Marvel, this week we've got Amazing Spider-Man 681, Avengers Academy number 27, Avengers The Children's Crusade number 9, and that's the final issue of that limited series, and that is a storyline featuring the young Avengers searching for the Scarlet Witch, and that is going to play heavily into the Avengers versus X-Men big event this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Also from Marvel this week, Defenders number 4, Fear Itself, The Fearless number 10, and that is of a 12-issue kind of epilogue to the Fear Itself storyline last year from Marvel. Ultimate Comics Spider-Man number 8, Uncanny X-Men number 8, and Villains for Hire number 4, and that's also the final issue of that limited series. One honorable mention from IDW, so you can consider it an independent book this week that I wanted to say, was out John Byrne's X-Men Aftermath number 41. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, John Byrne, very well known from history in comics, probably best known for his work on X-Men with Chris Claremont. Also, great work on Fantastic Four. Very distinct artist and storyteller. Puts a lot of humor into his books, like he did with She-Hulk. But just a great writer and artist. And one of the titles that he created and owns in 1991 was Next Men. Now, 1991 was a great time for comics. I mean, that period, we had the Legend imprint from Dark Horse Comics that published John Byrne's Next Men. They were also publishing Frank Miller's Sin City, Mike Mignolia's Hellboy. It was just a creator-based imprint and gave them a place to produce their work, comparable to what was happening with Image Comics at the time with that whole uprising. We also had Valiant Comics being produced at that time, so a lot of competition with DC and Marvel coming from these other publishers, and more specifically from these creator-owned titles. John Byrne produced Next Men with Dark Horse from 91 to 95, ran 30 issues, but left us hanging a little. And now it's being produced by IDW. They've picked up where they left off. They ran a new series recently for 9 issues, and then there's an Aftermath series that will conclude the entire storyline. That started with 40, which is the numbering of what the books would have been had they run in continuity. And again, Aftermath 41 out today. So I would recommend it. It's a little challenging to jump in the middle, but you can get the trade paperbacks that collect the story and catch up on it. It's a good read and great art, again, from John Byrne. Now, otherwise, I mentioned earlier the Avengers Children's Crusade concluding this week. Now, that is an important title for the Avengers versus X-Men event that's happening this year. And I mentioned that I wanted to talk about those events, those big crossover events that the comics produce every year. Last year from Marvel, we had the Fear Itself big crossover event. It was 130 some odd total between the different series that ran the storyline, as well as all the limited series and one-shots that were put out. just a massive storyline crossing over so many different books. It gets a little intimidating, I'll say. It kind of defeats the purpose of that ease of entry that they're looking to accomplish with their Point 1 books and their Season 1 titles. And when you've got just this massive, giant story, it's hard to jump into the middle of it. And frankly, I tend to wait until it's complete and then read it all together, and consequently, sometimes I don't get to it. I haven't read last year DC produced Flashpoint, which was a big, giant event that led and built into the relaunch that DC had in September. Now, since I knew they were relaunching, I figured that I could just jump in at the relaunch and eventually go back and read Flashpoint, and I haven't yet, so it almost defeats the purpose. But I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think of these big events and what these big crossovers mean, both for your interest and for the industry. You can let me know your thoughts on my comic book blog, he'sgotissues.com. That's a Facebook blog, so you can let me know what you think there and check out what I'm reading and what I think. But that's it for me now. I'm out of time, so until next week, I'm John Cooney, and I've got issues.